Good afternoon. We'll be starting in 5 minutes. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are today. This is another exciting moment on the webinars organized by African Organization for Standardization. I am Dr. Mojen Sengimana, Secretary General of African Organization for Standardization. I will moderate the discussion of today. ARSO is an intergovernmental organization that is in charge of developing standard and harmonizing conformity assessment. The ARSO mandate under the African Continental Free Trade Area is very crucial when you look at the TBT Annex 6, Article 6. That's ARSO and AfCFTA, which is an African organization on electrotechnical standard, are mandated to develop the standard. And countries which are the state parties or under the AfCFTA should be using the ARSO standard. But you probably know that having the standard alone, it's just papers. Implementation of standard is very, very key. Implementation of standard is in different areas because standards are by concept voluntary, but some are also mandatory. One part on the voluntary side is through the conformity assessment, and the other part when they are mandatory is through the technical regulation. Today we have the speakers who will discuss with us, who will teach us on conformity assessment matters. There are four key objectives on this webinar. The first objective is to understand what is the conformity assessment and the position of conformity assessment under the quality infrastructure. The second point, conformity assessment schemes use standards. How the technical committees that develop standard play a role in the conformity assessment. Third is on the issue of mutual recognition, where we should learn how we can have one standard, one test, and one certificate to be able to trade to one another. And lastly, but not least, we should see how do we help actually the users. The users are the manufacturers, the users are our SMEs. We will also hear from that and see how we can move forward. I welcome the speakers, and without further delay, I would like to ask Caroline Aota, who is the regional manager of Kenya Bureau of Standards, and who is also the chairperson of our Conformity Assessment Committee, who can now discuss with us on the issues on the conformity assessment, streamlining and connecting standard with the market through harmonized conformity assessment procedure, and increase the efficiency of product testing and the certification in Africa. The role of ARSO CACO. Today, I am pleased to have three panelists who are ladies who have been interacting with the quality infrastructure. In our last webinar, actually, I was told that I was so biased on having a panel with few ladies. Now today we have 3 out of 1. Yeah, I think it's a good improvement today. Caroline, you can start our discussion.
Thank you very much, SJ, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Because I have limited time, allow me to just go straight into my presentation. I just need confirmation that you can see it. SG, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. So I'm just going to spend a little time demystifying conformity assessment for those of you who are new to conformity assessment. And then I'll talk a little bit about CACO and what we do. And I will go right ahead to do that now. So I have done this in a few slides. We'll talk about conformity assessment per se, then we'll talk about ARSO CACO in a little bit of detail, because ARSO CACO is the tool that we are using to implement standards at ARSO, and then I'll update you on how far we have gone in this venture. So ISO 17000, which is the fundamentals and vocabulary document for conformity assessment, defines conformity assessment as demonstration that specified requirements are fulfilled. Demonstration that specified requirements are fulfilled. Now it's a pretty simple definition, but it is very loaded, because it is on the basis of this conformity assessment that goods are able to travel across the continent in as far as the continental free trade area is concerned. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's the definition. And there are many fields, and I'll give you examples of fields of conformity assessment. But really, when you're talking about conformity assessment, you're saying, how do I demonstrate that the product, the process, the person fulfills certain requirements, and therefore I can accept this product, this person, this process to be part of my, my trade regime. Now, WTO has a slightly different definition of conformity assessment, and the definition is any procedure used directly or indirectly to determine that relevant requirements in technical regulations and standards are fulfilled. I'm sorry, I didn't add that. And standards are fulfilled, which means that WTO puts a little bit of detail to the definition of conformity assessment. WTO then looks at what procedure are you using to determine that a product or a process or a service can be accepted into my territory, because WTO obviously deals with trade, international trade. So conformity assessment is important because it provides consumers. So whether you're talking about certification or inspection or accreditation, whatever it is, it provides consumers with confidence that the products that have been provided to them and the services meet certain requirements. So conformity assessment implies that somebody has evaluated and checked that this product, these processes, these services meet requirements, and therefore gives competitive edge to qualifying objects of conformity assessment or qualifying products or services or persons, as the case may be. Now, it's also very important, conformity assessment is also very important for regulators, because regulators are an important part of the conformity, of the quality infrastructure, because regulators are the ones that administer technical regulations. And we all know, for those of us who are involved in trade, that technical regulations have the potential to cause barriers to trade. And therefore, when you have a conformity assessment regime that is acceptable or recognized by the regulators, then you have an easier time moving goods, product services across the continent in the context of the AfCFTA. Now, there's various mechanisms for performing conformity assessment, and this is my area of interest and expertise, but I don't have enough time to go through them. But these are the various ways in which conformity assessment is done. One, testing, which is used a lot, because a lot of times before you certify a product or before you allow a product to enter a territory, you want to test it and evaluate it against predetermined specifications and requirements. Then there is inspection, which is based on the capacity of the inspector to actually differentiate between a complying product and a non-complying product. Then there's certification, which of course we know is the third-party attestation to make sure that either a product, a person, or a system actually meets requirements. And accreditation, which is the process again which conformity assessment bodies are told to be competent to undertake the conformity assessment activity that is attributed to them. Then, of course, there's mutual recognition, which is a process of evaluating and determining whether we can accept the conformity assessment results between different conformity assessment groups. And then, of course, the supplier declaration of conformity, which is the supplier's own declaration that the supplier or the organization is meeting certain determined requirements. So this is the array of conformity assessment activity that can happen across the trading arena. And for each of these, ARSO, which is the International Organization for Standardization, has developed a requirement document. And therefore there is a requirement document that covers every part of this conformity assessment activities. Now, let's talk a little bit about CACO and why CACO was developed. Now, CACO stands for the African Organization for Standardization's Conformity Assessment Committee. So it's ARSO CACO, which means ARSO's Conformity Assessment Committee. Now, CACO is aligned almost, but not quite, to ISO CASCO, which I am the vice chair. But CACO has a slightly more in-depth mandate, because CACO's role is to make sure that the procedures and systems that are needed for conformity assessment to happen across the continent actually do happen, which is slightly different from what CASCO does, because CASCO takes care of policy, yes, for conformity assessment, but also develops the standards. Now, what we try to do in CACO is to make sure that we align our procedures, align our documents to the international regime, while recognizing that a lot of the conformity assessment bodies within the region are actually not at the level where they are ready for accreditation. And therefore, we try as much as possible to come up with quality assessment, conformity assessment procedures that take this into consideration. So the objectives of CACO are three: to provide a certification or a conformity assessment system for processes, goods, products, and services to be produced in accordance with Africa standards. Now, this is key because the base of CACO is use of Africa standards. So one of the things that we try and push in CACO is that members actually adopt Africa standards, because in the long run, Africa standards are the ones that are going to help us to trade across the continent. We are also focused on improving the quality of goods in Africa, which means that by providing conformity assessment procedures and schemes, we are able to evaluate products across the continent, identify what the gaps are, and actually improve the quality of products or goods that are traded within the continent. Because even though we want to trade, we also want to trade in quality products. And then we also provide a forum for collaboration in conformity assessment matters across the continent. So CACO is made up of ARSO members, and then the membership, they nominate experts to sit on CACO. And so at the current moment, we have 21 countries, and they're listed on the screen. I don't have time to go through them. And what happens is that the leadership of CACO is elected during the ARSO CACO plenary. And the current leadership is chaired by myself from Kenya, vice chair is from Tunisia, and our secretary is from South Africa. Now, this is how CACO is structured. We fall under the technical directorate of the ARSO Central Secretariat, and we have two subcommittees. One subcommittee that is of interest to this webinar is the one on standards implementation, and it has 4 working groups. And these working groups deal with goods, products, and services in the different areas of that are listed there. Policy. So the policy and governance working group deals with coming up with the procedures and the tools for conformity assessment across the continent. And then we have a working group on products and sustainability certification schemes, so providing the specific schemes for goods that are traded within the continent. And then we have a working group on services, so that we're able to trade in services across the continent. And then we have a special working group, one of our special working groups on Africa traditional medicine, which I think is important because it is specific just to Africa, and it is an important trading good. So far we have achieved the following. We have come up with the ACAP procedures, which as I indicated earlier, are based on international standards, but modified to allow conformity assessment bodies developing across the continent to aspire to the level of accreditation. And therefore, automatically, those conformity assessment bodies that are accredited to the documents in the CASCO toolbox actually obviously have already passed, but we have a process of making sure that we can use the ACAP procedures or the African Conformity Assessment procedures to qualify conformity assessment bodies that are not yet there, but also they aspire to get to the point where they are accredited. We have also developed the ECOMARC scheme, certification scheme, and it's up and running, and we are very proud of it because we already have products across the continent that are certified to this environmental labeling scheme. And then we're in the process of harmonizing procedures for conformity assessment so that they are used within the context of the CFTA. And we are also identifying, so we are actively identifying experts across the continent to undertake the conformity assessment activities beyond ECOMAC, because ECOMAC, this work has already been done for ECOMAC, but for other conformity assessment schemes, we need experts across the continent so that we do not have to people moving around a lot because it becomes expensive for the producers. And then we have 2 new schemes, and this is the pharmaceutical project as well as the Made in Africa project. So how does CACO fall into this picture? CACO ensures that the structures, procedures that are needed for conformity assessment are available across the continent, and that these structures and procedures are based on international standards, and therefore they do not pose a technical barrier to trade. And therefore we try as much as possible to make sure that we do not come up with systems and procedures that are more restrictive than required in the international standards. We also ensure competence of experts using the conformity assessment processes. And this is important because the process of conformity assessment is only as good as the experts that are doing it. So it's important for us to have people who are competent to undertake conformity assessment activities. And then, of course, we have a system where we align conformity assessment procedures and schemes to international standards. Again, this is to make sure that these schemes are not more trade restrictive than they should be. And then we are instrumental. So one of our TOR is to make sure that we develop capacity for the continent. For the longest time, the African continent has been very dependent on external capacity, external to Africa capacity. And it's about time we developed our own capacity within the continent so that we are able to competently undertake conformity assessment activities without unduly relying on external capacity. And so in a nutshell, that's what I would like to say. And I'd like to hand back to the SG. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this webinar.
Caroline, thank you very much. I saw that you have 21 countries in the CACO. Yeah.
Yes.
And we are looking at having an Africa continental free trade area with 55 countries. Yeah.
Yes.
Where do you see CACO within this AfCFTA?
Okay, so since CACO is the one that is responsible for making sure that conformity assessment happens across the continent, that's one of the challenges that we have identified. And one of the things that we have set ourselves to do as a new leadership is to make sure that there's more countries participating. In 2016, when I was first elected as chair, we had 25 countries participating in CACO. Now we only have 21. But this participation in CACO is voluntary for ARSO member bodies. And therefore, my urge to ARSO member bodies is to participate. You all know, for standards people in the room, you all know that standards are written by the people in the room. Yes, there is the process of public review, but really the people who make the decisions, the people who turn the tide are the ones who participate. And therefore, it is in the interest of member bodies to participate in ARSO CACO. And so my appeal to member bodies represented in this webinar is that please nominate experts to CACO. This is where the difference is made, because this is where we will decide on what basis will goods be accepted across the continent. And therefore, it's very important to participate in CACO.
Just a follow-up a key issue, because we have seen the trend of what is called the good practice, where different Bureau of Standards are being split into different institutions, and institution with only maybe conformity assessment issue, another one just developing the standard. What is your view in that? Because yes, ARSO is intergovernmental body, but if you are only maybe calling for the institutions which are in charge of standardization and no more in charge of conformity assessment, would it be a challenge?
I think it is. And this is my own opinion, Dr. Himogen. So I sometimes get into trouble because of this opinion, but I'm entitled to an opinion. My opinion is that a lot of countries in Africa are not yet ready to go the way that you have described. And that for the sake of efficiency and for the sake of just effectiveness of carrying out of conformity assessment activities, or even just standardization activities, it is important for the time being for the national standards bodies who have conformity assessment activities to actually continue to be together. And I base this on, and so this is the discussion that's being had in Kenya as well, where we are saying, should we split our conformity assessment bodies? Should we have an inspection different from a certification body, different from a standards making body? And the ones who have prematurely gone this way have actually failed. There's benefit in the conformity assessment mechanisms within the NSB coming together because they ride on each other, they complement one another. I do not think that this is, I do not say that it is impossible for us to get to the point where we are able to split, but we are not yet ready. And the evidence is shown by the ones, and I don't want to name them because I could get into trouble, but the ones, the national standards bodies that have done the split are actually struggling. And perhaps if there are some on this call, they would bear with me on this. But I think it's not yet time. So yes, perhaps down the road it is possible, but right now we find that the more effective structures that work within the continent are those where each of the different parts are actually complementing and supporting one another.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It's a good comment. It's the expert view. Don't worry for being in the trouble. It's the expert view. We will see more. It's good to start the discussion. Thank you very much for your insight and good presentation. Our next speaker is Javier Garcia, who is the Vice President of Senelec, but is also the Director General of Spanish Association for Standardization. We are happy to have Javier with us today to discuss from the decentralized to centralized trading system, role of standards harmonization technical committees in supporting single markets, how technical committees supported the European single market. Javier, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Imogen. Thank you very much to ARSO for this invitation to Sen and Senelec to share with all of you the experience of Europe around the contribution of standards development to the operation of the single market. And let me see if I can share with you my presentation. Do you see it now?
Yes, I see it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as I said, it's really a pleasure again to meet all of you, to meet you personally, that we have shared some good meetings around the ASO General Assemblies. Also, big pleasure to have to share this panel with Yves, who is also with me and enjoying the responsibility of working together in the ISO Council. Also, I saw in the participants our good friend Satvir from the South African Bureau of Standards. It's a real pleasure, as I said, to share with you our experience around the role of the technical committees that develop standards for the region of Europe, in this case, and how they have contributed to the single market, to building such a single market. Let me start my presentation by referring to what was the situation in 86, where we had at the time, as you can see there, well, I was not around in the standards business then, but I've been for quite some time, since I would say for the last 20 years, and I've had the pleasure to see how this has evolved over time and really contributed to make the lives of our industries, of those that want to trade in bigger markets, a bit easier. So at the time, there were over 160,000 national standards all over the European countries. Just also to share with you what was the situation in Spain. So you see the evolution in 1993, around 65% of the catalog of Spanish standards were purely national standards in 1993, 65%. Today, that is only 19%. So this evolution of our national catalog from mostly purely national standards to mostly regional European standards and international standards is a clear evolution that we have been seeing in a natural way during this past 2-3 decades, I would say. In relation to how this was implemented, I like very much this principle of one standard applying in 34 countries. You see in the slide the logos of the national standards bodies and in some cases the national committees of the IEC from all the members of both CEN and CENELEC. Today, we have around 23,000 common European standards, 23,000. Of those, just 3,000, around 3,000, are the ones used to support European regulation. All the other standards, say around 20,000, are standards developed by the marketplace for the marketplace. And this is very important to have in mind because we are talking about some key principles here. The mandatory national adoption of European standards in all these 34 countries. Also the mandatory withdrawal of national conflicting standards with those European standards. This is what, as a consequence, brought, for example, the situation that I shared with you in Spain. And again, this applies to all European standards, not just to those that support regulations from the European regulator, from the European Commission. So this has clearly contributed to withdraw, to take away technical barriers to trade and facilitate trade within the internal market. Let me share with you here some of the figures now coming closer to the theme of my presentation, which is the contribution of the technical committees. You see here in the slide the figures around the technical works in CEN and CENELEC. The number of technical committees, the number of joint technical committees between the two organizations, and in some cases between CEN, CENELEC and the third European Standards Organization, which is ETSI, probably known to many of you, the one focusing on telecoms, ICT area. With all these working groups, but to me, the most relevant figure here is the number of experts. These 90,000 expert roles registered in the experts management system of CEN and CENELEC, these are national experts, and they are the ones that really develop the standards, the national experts, and the key element of the national delegation principle that remains in Europe, in CEN and CENELEC, just as it applies in ARSO and IEC at the international level. So the key is the national committees. And here we have what we mean with this. We see the national layer where we have the national committees. I here just show the logos of 3 European standardization bodies, then the regional level, and then the international level. With which purpose? With the purpose of realizing that from one national mirror committee, our experts are mirroring and are working directly in the works of the regional level and at the same time in the works of the international level, so that they have the widest possible perspective of what's going on in the standardization landscape, and remaining always in mind the principle you can see in the header of this slide: work once, work at international level in order to stay aligned. Most of the stakeholders participating in standardization just want to work once. They don't have the time to be in one committee at the national level, then in another, and then in, so they want to work once, and this is where working directly in the international level, they get the biggest efficiency out of their works. In these technical committees at regional level, sometimes the European Commission, the regulator, sends standardization requests, which are to develop standards in areas where the regulator, the European Commission, wants to deploy their public policies. In some cases, this ends up being regulations, and consequently, standards developed in CEN and CENELEC support those regulations. In some other cases, it's not directly regulations, but just public policies that want to be sent out into the marketplace, and the regulator finds it is better to find or to send out these softer regulatory approaches, always having in mind, and I insist here, the prevalence of the international layer. For that, I also wanted to share with you the level of commitment there is from the European regional level towards the international sphere. What you see in the screen there is the level of adoption of international standards from both ISO and IC at international and European level. All in all, we can see that in CEN, we are talking about 34% of the ISO standards adopted as European standards. In the electrotechnical area, around closer to 80%, which is the reference we normally manage. 80% of the international IC standards adopted as European standards. What this represents is a tremendous commitment and the clear vision of the importance of being present in the international standards organizations. Presence both for our stakeholders, for the companies in our countries, but also for us, for those working in the standards organizations, to be present in the governance of both organizations, so that we put all our resources in ensuring that both ISO and IC work in efficiently in the line of action that we desire. For this reason is that several of us, include myself here, as I said before, we are present today in the ISO Council, and the intention also of myself to run from in the near future for some more governance positions in ISO. All of this coming together, and with this slide I finalize my presentation, to what others believe about really the operation of standardization to ensure that the single market in Europe works efficiently. It would be easy for me to say as a standardizer, yeah, this has been really fantastic, and the standardization is key for this to work. Fortunately, it's not me that has to say it, but the European Commission itself that launched this communication I share with you in the screen here. And I just want to read with you the very first sentence here in the conclusion of this communication, that reads as follows: the European standardization system has been instrumental for the development of the single market. So this to me is the key message here. What is so critical also is to be very clear about the role of each party, the role of the policymakers that regulate, and the role of standardizers that develop standards that respond to market needs and under a very clearly established public-private partnership, we come together to really support and facilitate trade amongst the different countries of, in this case, the internal market of the European Union. Is this the end of a story? No, it's not. It's just one step. And hopefully, if we manage to deal correctly these roles between the policymaker, the standardizers, the industry, we will manage to keep on being successful and develop and deliver safety, security, legal compliance, innovation, access to international markets to our stakeholders. This was all I wanted to share with you, and now I'm open for any questions there might be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Javier. Very interesting to see even that at the Spain level, Spanish level, you have came from 65% of national standard to 19%. And you also indicated very important point that, yes, we have ISO standard, but in the whole system of CEN, you have 33.9% that are directly linked to ISO international standard. I am looking at the African continent. Actually, before I was scared that probably we might not reach there, but you have shown us that you have one standard within 34 countries, mandatory withdrawal, mandatory adoption. How do you deal with all these 90,000 experts looking at from the MIRA committees? Who is coming at the regional level? Is it all the members of the MIRA committees, or how do you do it?
Yes, it is the members of the national committees. The system is at regional level is for us, we manage it just the same as we do with the international level. So we have the national mirror committees are the ones that determine their delegations and determine the experts that attend technical plenary meetings and working groups respectively. Be them in the regional level, be them in the international level. They are the ones, the national mirror committees, that determine their delegations. And we, the national standards body, are the ones that authorize their participation. But all the work is carried out in the National Mirror Committee. This is why I insist so much in their role, in the fact that one National Mirror Committee deals at the same time with national standards, regional, in this case, European standards, and international standards. So all the participants there have the full picture of what's going on in standardization in their sector. And this is even more critical today since we have seen such an increase in virtual participation in international and regional standards development, because this offers the possibility for more experts to participate in standardization. This is something we really need to build upon. And this is something that is accessible, well, like this webinar today for everyone all over the world. No? So this is how we manage it.
Thank you. The other part, I don't want to release you without asking you this crucial issue. 23,000 and 3,000 related to the regulator, which is European Union, asking CENELEC to develop those standards. Do you advise that we have the AfCFTA, we have also African Union, Commission, who do you advise would actually play probably a regulatory role? If it was you, who do you think is more fit? Yeah, it's also an expert comment. We will not hold you responsible for anything. Thank you.
Well, I think that the relationship between the regulation and standardization is adding a huge value to the marketplace. In terms of legal certainty, for what manufacturers need to comply with when they access other markets, and in terms of growth for them consequently. So I think that this relationship is definitely there to stay. I wouldn't be fair if I wouldn't recognize the value of this 3,000 out of the 23,000. This 3,000 and the privileged relation that there exists between the standardizer, Senelec, and the regulator, the European Commission, is really a huge value to our stakeholders, to the marketplace, be it industry, companies, laboratories, conformity assessment bodies. So this privileged relation is really a huge added value, and it is there. But it is not the basis of the system. The basis of the system is the market initiative, industry leadership in the development of standards. If there was no product there, if there was no standards there at the beginning, the regulator, the European Commission, never would have thought of using those standards to support the deployment of their policies. So we definitely need to stick to this principle of market leadership, industry leadership in development of standards, but obviously being aware of the value that the link with the policymakers and those standardization requests from regulators to standardizers to facilitate the compliance with those regulations, that really adds value. So I think I answered in a bit of political way, but definitely to me, it's the key partnership. But having clear that each one has a role and a very different role.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, you reached the level even including industrialization. Without industrial product, as you said, you cannot even have a standard. Thank you, Javier. We are still together. If we have some more questions, I will come back to you. Thank you a lot for your insight and good presentation. Our next speaker is Sarah, who is the counselor in the Trade and Environment Division at WTO. She will be discussing with us creating a predictable trading environment through better trade policies, how to ensure that conformity assessment procedures are non-discriminatory and facilitate trade through harmonization and mutual recognition arrangement. Sarah, you can start your presentation. Thank you for being with us. You can unmute. You are muted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, well, I'm delighted to be joining this webinar with ARSO on conformity assessment and trade. As mentioned, I work at the WTO on TBT matters, and previously I was working on SPS issues. And I'd like to share with you today a little bit the perspective from the multilateral framework. Obviously, there are a lot of initiatives at the regional level, continental level in Africa. And what I can bring in is a bit of an update, a perspective from sort of the international level. So I will also try now to share my screen. Could you confirm that you see the screen?
Yes, I can confirm. We are seeing your screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I'll start by basically stating probably the obvious, to say that conformity assessment procedures, and these were very well explained by our first speaker, they are among the most burdensome non-tariff measures faced by both agri-food and manufacturing exporters. And here we have some data resulting from a business survey conducted by our sister organization, ITC, in 37 countries. And when asked, businesses themselves have said that not technical requirements, but the conformity assessment procedures are the most burdensome barriers they face. And this includes the testing, the inspection, the certification. So there is really an issue there around the globe, and including in Africa. And how do we tackle this issue? Of course, one way is, one attempt has been the TBT agreement and the framework that it provides on technical regulations and conformity assessment procedures. One of the key principles under the TBT agreement, as well as many of the other WTO agreements, is of course non-discrimination. But when we apply this to conformity assessment, it's a bit different. And here, trust is really key. It can well be that an importing country treats certificates from two different countries differently based on the level of trust they have on that piece of paper. And for that, there are some additional provisions and procedures that are laid out also in the agreement. So the agreement also recognizes the challenge of non-discrimination when it comes to conformity assessment. At the same time, another key principle is avoidance of course, unnecessary barriers to trade. And here, what has come out a lot in committee discussions and disputes at the WTO level is that there should be proportionality between the risk and the measures taken for assess conformity. So for high-risk products, if we're talking about toys which may contain chemicals, toxic chemicals, threatening life of children, there you may need more demanding conformity assessment procedures, but maybe for low-risk products, we can adopt less demanding conformity assessment procedures. The agreement, of course, also promotes the use of international standards and systems where these are applicable. Of course, developing countries may sometimes have challenges adopting international standards due to their level of development, especially if they have not been involved in their development and feel they don't sometimes reflect the realities in certain regions, geographic regions, for example. But also sometimes members can still say that an international standard is not appropriate for meeting their legitimate objectives in national security or human health. Another big principle is that the agreement encourages the recognition of foreign conformity assessment results, but this is not automatic, and this is also recognized. This can only be done under certain conditions and through prior consultation. There is also an encouragement to negotiate mutual recognition agreements, but again, this is much easier among like-minded parties, parties that already have trust in each other's systems, and of course, with another counterpart who has sound quality infrastructure systems. And I know that there's a lot going on in Africa to boost at all levels this quality infrastructure. And of course, another important element that has been highlighted is accreditation in order to consider accepting conformity assessment results from other bodies, from conformity, for example, conformity assessment bodies in other countries, if they have been internationally accredited. Still, the encouragement is there. And of course, as in all our WTO agreements, there's a very strong transparency component also for conformity assessment. Members of the WTO and many of the AfCFTA members, state parties are also members of the WTO, need to notify the WTO whenever they are introducing a new technical regulation or conformity assessment procedure and provide a comment period. This may improve the upcoming requirements, may result in changes to them, but it also provides for predictability so that trading partners know what do I need to do to show compliance and not be surprised when they arrive at the border with their goods. So this is just a very quick overview of the principles, just to say that the AfCFTA's Annex 6 on TBT actually builds on all these principles. It adopts the agreement principles and any pursuant committee decisions, including on conformity assessment. So there is a close link between what is in the WTO sphere and in the AfCFTA. Now, what has, in light of what's in the agreement, what has the TBT committee, which oversees the implementation of the agreement, done on conformity assessment? Here again, I want to start by showing some statistics, some data. Chart 1, on my left at least, shows the notifications that we have been receiving. For example, this is about over a 10-year period from members. And it shows that most of the notifications on new measures relate to technical regulations, and a smaller share relate to conformity assessment procedures. But then looking at chart 2, this is members usually take the opportunity of TBT committee meetings to raise specific trade concerns on some of the notifications that have come in, notified regulations. And if you look at the specific trade concerns raised, half of them are actually relate to conformity assessment procedures. So the share of conformity assessment notifications is low, but many of them raise concerns. So, and what kind of concerns? That they're duplicative, they're costly, the procedures aren't clear, and so results from an accredited, international accredited body even is not recognized, and so on and so on. So again, we see the problems are there at the global level as well, although sometimes they are also resolved through the dialogue offered by the forum of the TBT. So in light of this, over the years, the TBT committee has discussed the issue during thematic sessions and adopted decisions and recommendations to facilitate acceptance of conformity assessment results, for example. So here I'd like to just share with you a decision of the committee, which adopted by consensus among the parties, which is an indicative list of approaches to facilitate acceptance of results from other countries. So there's no priority among these options. So one of the options presented is mutual recognition agreements, that these can be a useful way for sort of having one test but recognized everywhere. However, some caution has also been shared. We have had a number of thematic sessions where members have shared their experiences, but also challenges with conclusion of MRA. First of all, they're usually concluded at a sectoral level, of course, not at a global level, but a number of members have said that they take a really long time to negotiate, they become rigid and difficult to update, and may not always be the most pragmatic way of recognizing conformity assessment results of other parties. And they have said, for example, among the other options, designating conformity assessment bodies in other countries as recognizing conformity assessment results from designated bodies in other countries has been shown and indicated as an alternative practical option, or acceptance of results from international accredited bodies. Or sometimes unilateral recognition can also be an option. Or for low-risk products, a manufacturer's or supplier's declaration of conformity has also been considered as a good option, as long as there is some good mechanisms in place for market surveillance, for legal framework, for enforcement, and so on. And of course, this was one of the decisions of the committee related to conformity assessment, and currently the committee is working on developing guidelines for the choice and design of conformity assessment procedures. Now, I just want to finish for now with some final remarks, and I'm happy to answer follow-up questions. First, to recall that given the linkages between the TBT agreement and Annex 6 of the AfCFTA, I think work under both frameworks can reinforce each other. So I'd encourage African members and ARSO, which is an observer in the committee, to follow the discussions, provide inputs to the TBT committee's deliberations, and also update on what is going on at the continental or regional level in Africa. I'd also like to recall that should members manage to reach mutual recognition agreements, bilateral, regional, or plurilateral, they should actually be notified under a specific article of the TBT agreement, Article 10.7. And if you want to see some examples of the MRAs, which have been notified already by others, I can give you and show you how to access the sort of more than 100 that have been notified. And often these are in sectors, they are sector specific. So in cosmetics, organics, electronics, medical products, and so on. And finally, just a final point, since we are still in this COVID pandemic situation, interestingly, the pandemic has led to some more flexible and trade facilitating conformity assessment procedures to be adopted by some members. And some of these have been notified to the WTO. In fact, I was talking about the obligation to notify. We've received around 153 notifications since the start of the pandemic of measures relating to COVID-19. And a good number of them relate to conformity assessment. And in light of the circumstances of inability to travel and so on, there are facilitating measures. For example, use of remote assessment technologies, electronic certificates, or mutual or unilateral recognition of audits, inspection results, or approvals in other countries. And many of them, though, are for now adopted at the temporary, as a temporary measures. So one question will be, can these eventually lead the way for some less burdensome procedures in the long run? So I'll just leave it at that and see if there are follow-up questions.
Thank you, Sarah. I think we should probably have a whole session, a webinar on mutual recognition. You ended up, it's very, very interesting. You ended up also on COVID issue, where we know many developing countries actually are begging for having the vaccines. And when I want to ask you, many times countries insist on accreditation. And you mentioned other ways like government designation, unilateral recognition, manufacturers and supplier declaration. What is really your view, looking at your experience for many years in this WTO agreement? What is your view on how Africa can really take this issue forward? Because if the implementation of the AfCFTA started from 1st of January, actually we should be trading. Yeah, what is your view on this? Many countries insisting always on only accreditation, not on the other options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a tough question. I'm not an expert on all the developments in Africa, but I think what is important, one issue that we often say is that sometimes if systems, QI systems, for example, are not mature enough, they will tend to rely on more restrictive systems because they may not have the whole capacity to, for example, run sort of a risk-based system. And of course, there's also the issue of trust between countries, and this may be easier among neighbors than countries far apart. So in that sense, what I have observed is that indeed these mutual recognition agreements as such can take a long time, can be cumbersome. We have also, by the way, if you wish, I can share later on a link, study, for example, on regional trade agreements and which ones have concluded MRAs within them. Some of them are notified to the WTO to be treated or not. And in some cases, in some sectors, they seem to work well. But I think it is important to be pragmatic and maybe not always require third-party certification to start with, depending on the risk of products. And if so, then of course, regional or international accreditation is a way of securing compliance. But designation of bodies in other countries as acceptable conformity assessment bodies for your purposes can also be sort of an acceptable approach. And Canada has sort of raised this quite a few times in recent experience sharing sessions, for example. So I think it's important to be pragmatic and not have sort of the all-encompassing agreement which would cover all sectors, all potentialities.
Thank you, Sarah. Comme on le dit en français, nul n'est prophète chez soi. Probablement que nos participants comprennent comment on peut avancer dans les reconnaissances mutuelles. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you a lot. Yeah. Our next speaker is actually well known in the ARSO family. She's Dr. Eve Gadzikwa, our direct past president. Dr. Eve Gadzikwa is also the CEO of SAZ, Standard Association of Zimbabwe. She will be discussing with us standard technical regulation, conformity assessment and trade, making conformity assessment work for the African enterprises, SMEs, to take advantage of the expanding opportunities under the AfCFTA agreement. Dr. Eve, yeah, you can share with us your thought on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Himogen, for the opportunity to be part of this very interesting discussion today. It's very exciting to see so many people who have logged on, 164. I was just looking. I think this is quite a huge achievement for us, so congratulations for that. And also to thank all the presenters who've spoken before me. You know, congratulations to Caroline, Yabie, and Sira. I think you've made my work much, much easier. So I'll go straight into my very short presentation. Please confirm that you can see it before I proceed.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. Excellent. So I think much has already been covered by the previous speakers. You know, from the perspective now of the users of the conformity assessment services, I think it's all well and good that we speak about what we're doing under the African Continental Free Trade Area. But at the end of the day, we really need to drill down to those people who are going to be implementing you know, the conformity assessment services within the various respective countries. So in my very short presentation, what I'm going to be talking about is, I'll just share a little bit of a background, much of which has already been covered. And then I'll really zone in and focus on the different lenses of conformity assessment in respect of the different groups of individuals or groups of, I should say, stakeholders who will be implementing conformity assessment, and then speak a little bit about the African Continental Free Trade Area implementation and quality infrastructure harmonization efforts, and then you know, the concepts, the methods, the principles, and then speak about the efforts that need to be made to ensure that our various groups of individuals will be able to unlock value from their Made in Africa products, and then I'll conclude. So I think as a way of background, this is really, encapsulating what has already been covered mostly by Caroline and I should say Javier and Sarah. What exactly are we trying to achieve in all of this? We're really trying to ensure that we improve our inter and intra-Africa trade and the level of cooperation, mutual recognition, harmonization in the area of technical barriers to trade. As we have heard, TBTs, we should try as much as possible to avoid or at least to reduce the level of TBTs, technical barriers to trade, as we are implementing our single market on the continent. And the uniqueness of Africa is that, with our 55 countries, we've got our enterprises, we also have our SMEs, and that's the reality on the ground. There is an opportunity under the single market to take advantage of this huge market, which is made of about 1.3 billion people, estimated at $2.5 trillion US. That's a huge opportunity, it's a huge market. And, however, the reality on the ground, as we have heard, we've got all these different countries with different economic backgrounds, and the COVID has actually heightened the gaps which exist within the quality infrastructure in respect of standards, technical regulations, and conformity assessment. And so the effort really is to bridge those gaps. And so the role on the continent is to support trade and investment, which cannot be underestimated, and also to take advantage of the opportunities and the value chains that the continent has at its disposal. So looking at the lenses now, the conformity assessment lenses through the different lenses, we have our manufacturers on one end, we do have our traders, our national standards bodies, our governments, customers, SMEs, okay? So let's look at our manufacturers. What is it that they're concerned about? We are now entering, we are in the fourth industrial revolution. So the issue of innovation and market access is a big issue because Africa wants to access those markets. On the other hand, we've got our traders. What are they concerned about? They're concerned about the TBTs. And, as we have heard already that, conformity assessment can either expedite or cause serious hindrances to the flow of goods. And most trade disputes, as you have heard, are in relation to conformity assessment. And then TBTs requires that conformity assessment procedures do not create unnecessary obstacles to international trade. And then NSBs, what are we concerned about? As NSBs, we really need to make sure that social impact is at the forefront of our business as we undertake our day-to-day activities. Our governments are concerned about health and safety, that risk-based approach to make sure that our consumers are safe. They're also concerned that the economies are competitive. And then our customers want to make sure that when they buy a product, it doesn't matter whether Zimbabwe is buying a product from Nigeria or from South Africa, the product has to be fit for purpose and it's of high quality. And then the SMEs, what do they want? They want a level playing field. And they are really concerned about the cost considerations of conformity assessment. That is the bottom line. If they can't afford these services, then they can't access the quality that they need. So this slide is just in a nutshell summarizing what we're talking about in terms of the quality infrastructure. It's basically two issues. On one end, we've got the institutions, and on the other hand, we've got these various activities that we're doing. We are very grateful and happy about the progress that ARSO is making in terms of harmonizing standards on the continent and implementing through the African Standards Harmonization Model, which we call ASHAM, which we have adopted, and it seems to be working very well. And as of today, I've been made to understand there are over 1,200 standards that have already been harmonized on the continent. So harmonization is really undertaken to enable the removal of technical barriers to trade, especially when such barriers arise due to differences in standards referenced at technical regulations. This is important for us to understand as SMEs and as enterprises, that the same standards that we are talking about are the ones which are going to find their way into the technical regulations. So this is why the harmonization issue is very important. But there is this effort to come up with an STQM Act, which is work in progress, as you have heard from Secretary General, that this is soon going to be launched, where we are hoping to achieve a one standard, one test, one certificate, which will be accepted everywhere. So now, I think this is just to emphasize the issue that was already shared by Sira, to say, what's the problem? The real problem is the issue of trust. You know, non-discrimination is an issue, but at the same time, we also need to in the products that we're trading across the continent. And we do have some very unique products, you know, that are going to be, you know, that are being traded as we speak today, to give confidence in those products on one hand, and at the same time to ensure that the products and services deliver to their promise. So it's a question of trust. Can we trust our made in Africa products? Going to the issue of balancing societal and business concerns, I think this one here, I mean, it's self-explanatory. What we have here is we've got the conformity assessment or the quality infrastructure in the middle. This is the national standards bodies, the metrology, you know, the science of measurement, conformity assessment. On one end, we have societal concerns. On the other hand, businesses also have their own concerns. And as you can see from the societal needs, it's more about health and safety, environmental issues, etc., fair trade, consumer protection, government laws and regulations. But the businesses are saying, we want to trade. We need quality products. We need profitability. So how do we balance those interests? I think this is a very fundamental concern as we are implementing the single market. And then in terms of the types of conformity assessment, you know, in the more developed parts of the world, we have, you know, where we have declaration of conformity by first party or the manufacturers. A number of developing countries in Africa are not yet there where we can rely on self-declaration, but it is happening, as we know, where, you know, someone will say my product is quality. And then on, you know, middle of the road, we have what we call second tier or second party, where the customer actually has their own testing facilities, which is called homologation. And then we've got the third party, you know, level, which is, you know, a higher level, I would say, and very often accreditation. But on the continent, this is not always accessible to everyone. And this is where we are saying, how can we meet each other halfway in terms of the appropriate conformity assessment regime for the continent? So when everything is said and done, according to World Bank and our friends PTB, the quality infrastructure is critical for trade, innovation, and competitiveness. It's really to try and see if we can balance our, you know, increasing in the market access, improving the firm's productivity, and at the same time, protecting public good. If we can strike that balance of those three levels, then we are really making progress in terms of quality infrastructure, in terms of trade. This slide is, it looks complicated, but it's just to demonstrate on one slide what we're looking at. We're looking at accreditation bodies. You know, we do have our multi-economy accreditation body in SADC called SADCAS, but there's also the national accreditation bodies. A few countries have that. I know South Africa has one, Mauritius, Kenya, and a few other countries have their own. So in the middle, we have our testing facilities, our certification bodies, and our inspection bodies. Hopefully, a number of them are going for accreditation as we speak. And then we have the products which are actually, you know, tested etc. And then, of course, the standards to support all of that. This is what it actually looks like at the end of the day. It looks quite complicated for the ordinary person, but we hope that with these type of lectures that we're doing, we'll be able to unpack all of this. So we want competitiveness under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We really need to improve the competitiveness. Africa for a long time has been said not to be very competitive, but we hope through these efforts under the single market, we're looking ahead for quality infrastructure, which will be vital in maintaining and improving competitiveness and strengthening the regional value chains at the same time. And then the mechanisms to improve the quality infrastructure should not only be at national level, but should also be at regional, at continental level. And we normally, these PPPs, the government-private partnerships, public-private partnerships are really important to achieve this, because economies, some of the economies are quite weak. They will not be able to do it on their own. They need the support. That's very important. And also other partnerships as well, throwing the weight into this whole effort to strengthen the quality infrastructure. So in a nutshell, in conclusion, we are saying as a single market, we are very excited. We are very, very excited about this journey that we have begun. And I was very excited to hear Javier's story, the EU story, and how things have developed over the number of years. I think there are many lessons to learn. As a single market, the objective is we want to promote trade. We want to promote investments. We want to also promote global competitiveness and leveraging on the agreements that we have signed as African countries. Most of the African countries are signatories to the WTO. So the expectation is really to ensure that we take full advantage of the single market. But we will also be looking at how we can leverage our technical regulatory frameworks, harmonize those as well as the conformity assessment procedures, taking advantage of the infrastructure that we have for accreditation. Not every country will be able to have their own accreditation body, although we've seen that a number of them are going that route, but we should take advantage of the little resources that we have to optimize. And once again, well done to ARSO, for putting together this webinar, and also for the other Pan-African quality infrastructures that ARSO is working with in terms of the role in achieving the objective under the African Continental Free Trade Area. So that's what I've prepared. I'm available to answer any questions at the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Eve. A very, very inciting and very comprehensive presentation. You mentioned that SMEs really, or that they use the standard, or they look at the conformity assessment, but the cost issue. Yeah. How can we deal with this issue of the costs while they are also benefiting on the standard and the conformity assessment?
Yes, that's a very difficult question to answer, SG. The issue of costs, I think it's actually a universal problem, I would say, in most countries, including in Zimbabwe, where we are looking at what sort of structures we can put together, programs we can put together to assist our SMEs. For instance, coming up with a kind of like a maturity model, but leveraging the infrastructures that we already have in place, because it's not a one-day affair. I'll give you as an example. In my own country, we have our Ministry of SMEs that we are working very closely with. As SARS, we are very happy because we work very closely with our private sector. So we are fortunate in that we are well positioned to support our private sector. And we have identified business membership organizations where we hold workshops countrywide in all the provinces to train our SMEs. This is one approach that has worked very well for us. We've identified our SMEs through the various business membership organizations, and then we conduct trainings in all the provinces to help them understand, what is the standard, what is the benefit of the standard, how they can make use of the standards. For instance, during the COVID era, I'll give you as an example, government made a directive to say we need to support our SMEs who are producing, made in Zimbabwe products. And one of the products which we found SMEs getting involved in was the production of hand sanitizers and PPEs. So our role as the national standards body was to bring the standards closer to the SMEs, train them on the standards, the relevant standards, and help them to understand the requirements of what it takes to get their products certified. And so some of them have been certified. Many of them actually have attained conformity to the various standards. And some of them are even exporting, which is quite exciting. So this is the kind of journey that we've been on as the national standards body. And we're also encouraging them to take part in the standards development processes within the technical committees, because some of them are really experts in their own right. So it's to get them involved, and also working with the universities, institutions of higher learning, from the students, helping the students understand. So we are doing lectures with the universities. So there are many approaches that we've been taking actually during this time to try and unpack the importance of standards and quality infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abe. Toward concluding, I saw very good comments from our participants that we really need to know who is the regulator, who is the policymaker, who is the standardizer, who is doing what in the quality infrastructure, which is a good thing. There are also issues on risk assessment, on conformity matters. Caroline, in probably 4 minutes, you can answer on the issue of risk assessment based conformity assessment, actually with also technical regulation, and how can we change the narrative? A narrative that's always we look at Africa infrastructure negatively, not on the positive side, as if we have nothing. Caroline, can you take up those 2 issues and probably have one key recommendation as a takeaway from this webinar?
Thank you. Thank you, SG. Just to talk about the first one that you talked about and who is supposed to do what within the quality infrastructure. One of our terms of reference as AfCFTA is actually to create awareness on these issues, because I think it's also important for people to know how to be involved and who is involved in what. And therefore, this is one thing that we've taken up, and I've seen a lot of comments on the chat on this, and we are committed to making sure that the information is out there on our sub-website, which we are developing, and also in webinars that we shall hold. Now, the issue of risk assessment is extremely important. Now, when ISO 9001:2015 was published, then risk became the thing that we are talking about. But how does it play out? Let me give an example. You're importing a product that you import all the time. So this is just a practical example. And you have data on the quality of this product. You do not need, as a country as a continent whose resources are limited, to expend too much conformity assessment resources on a product that you already have data and you already know that it meets the requirements. So risk assessment works with regard to conformity assessment as using information on conformity assessment to good effect. So if you already have information on conformity assessment of a product that is being imported or being traded within your region, and you are able to occasionally check, then you're actually using risk assessment to reduce the cost of conformity assessment while still gaining the benefit of getting products that do not harm human health, plant health, and animal health, which is obviously a legitimate objective under the TPT agreement. And so, yes, risk assessment is important with regard to conformity assessment, and we must embrace it so that we are, because one of the mistakes we make as African nations is wanting to test, inspect everything, certify everything, whereas you could use conformity assessment to good effect. I don't know, SG, whether this is what you wanted me to respond to.
Yes, that's okay. But now you can also give us your takeaway message.
My takeaway message is we shouldn't demonize, allow me to use that word, the conformity assessment schemes or infrastructures that are already existing and are working. So let's not try as a continent to copy what is going on elsewhere, whereas we can, within our context, put in the necessary barriers, the necessary ways in which to manage the potential threats to impartiality within our conformity assessment system, and still be able to manage an integrated conformity assessment system within the continent. So I think it's about time we ourselves started to take to look at the conformity assessment systems that we are operating within the country, embrace what works, learn from other people, instead of importing or copying wholesale what is going on elsewhere, which then many times has a negative effect on our ability to trade within the continent. Thank you very much, SG, for giving me an opportunity to participate in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Javier, I would like to come back to the adoption, the mandatory adoption, a mandatory withdrawal of conflicting standards. And ask you, we have those 34 countries adopting the standard. Do you also have every time on each 23,000 standard, all the 34 countries participating in the development of each of those standards?
Thank you, Harmojin. No, a straightforward answer, no, definitely not. It depends. I mean, it depends on the level of relevance of the issue covered by the standard to each country, and on the availability of experts coming from the different stakeholder groups, be it companies, be it government, be it societal stakeholders. Depends on their availability. And what there is certainly is a minimum threshold of countries that need to participate in order for the standard development to go ahead. And then at the end of the process, all of them, yes, all of the 34 need to ballot, need to vote on the acceptance or rejection of the standards, regardless of whether they have directly participated in the development of the standard itself. So yes, certainly there are some areas in which there is no industry in one country, so that country has it difficult to participate, or there is no interest directly. In any case, those that have an interest work on it, develop it at the end of the day for the benefit of the whole community. But the answer very straightforward. No, definitely not all 34 participate in the development of all the standards.
But the adoption will be the 34.
The adoption is mandatory for all of them, and withdrawal of national standards is mandatory for the withdrawal of conflicting standards is mandatory for all of them. That is the key principle of the internal market. This same principle that applies to our standards development is applicable to regulatory development.
Thank you very much. What is the takeaway message that you can give us?
Well, my takeaway message would be around the element of trust that conformity assessment provides to the marketplace, to governments, to society as a whole, no? And that conformity assessment is carried out on the basis of solid and highly reputed standards. And that's important. And that is why it is so important that we put our stakeholders as much as possible to work in the development of standards, and as much as possible at the international level, because today, as we saw with the virtual participation, is so much easier, and that will make our lives easier when we need to decide on whether we adopt that international standard fully, identically, or not. As my predecessor Caroline was saying, adapting it to the reality and to the needs of our market, be it at the regional level, be it at the national level. And in the same way, also adapt our infrastructures, quality infrastructures, in terms of whether we need to have all the different elements in place, we can share them with other countries, or we can really deploy them according to our reality. So that is, to me, the message. Get involved in international standardization so that you can, as much as possible, avoid technical barriers to trade, but always consider, at the end of the day, your national, regional reality.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sarah, you talked about notification, and some of the comments were like, if we can also get the country, the African analysis on who is notifying, I think we can work on that and probably share with the participant. But I would like, you know that European Union have a common notification. Yeah, under the WTO. Do you think that we should start now thinking about it under the AfCFTA?
Yes, thank you. In fact, of course, the European Union is a member on its own to the WTO, and for areas where it has competence, it is notifying on behalf of all its members new technical regulations and conformity assessment procedures. But there are also other regions that are already notifying on behalf of a group of members. And this is the case, for example, for the Gulf countries, Gulf Cooperation Council. So they notify, one of them notifies on behalf of all when they adopt common standards. This is the case for a group of Central American countries as well. So it is possible. So this can also be an opportunity for, first of all, the RECs to do. And for example, the East African community I'm a bit more familiar with, they can also theory already start. And there are some procedures to sort out with the Secretariat, but it's already possible that a group of members that commonly develop standards together can and technical regulations. Of course, I have to also watch my language when we talk about mandatory technical regulation, and they can be notified by one on behalf of a group. And that facilitates also the commenting process, because otherwise, if 5, 6 are adopting it, and then you send the so it clarifies how the commenting process would work, who would be in charge of that as well. Because as you know, it's not only about notifying, but also receiving feedback.
Yes, thank you. What is the takeaway message for us?
Well, clearly at the moment, there's a lot of momentum to integrate the African continent more closely economically and promote investment, promote more trade among the African countries, much more than it is now, with the aim of seeing more growth and development in the continent. But of course, as you achieve that in the region, the African continent will become a bigger importer and will need the inputs for its productions, and will also want to export its products to the rest of the world. So just to reiterate that, not to lose the link with the international processes, And I'd encourage all member states, or also the representatives of REX and the continental CA reps, to follow what's going on, for example, at the WTO and at other levels, to make sure that whatever is happening at the international level, you can give feedback to, and also take into account for your own procedures that you're developing. So just to place this initiative, of course, in the larger picture. And finally, just one word on sort of issue of risk-based controls. Maybe some of you are already aware and involved, but there is the TBT agreement has, of course, these provisions on conformity assessment, but it's not the only one. We have this more recently concluded trade facilitation agreement, which has some linkages also for standards and technical regulations. And it also talks about, for example, risk-based controls at the border, integrated procedures for border procedure, and these also make a huge difference. So I would encourage all to, and every member has to have a trade facilitation committee with representatives from all relevant entities. So if not already the case, I'd encourage you to reach out to those who are working on trade facilitation to see how you can collaborate more and keep each other up to date on what's going on in the respective fields.
Thank you, Sarah, for being with us. Thank you very much. Dr. Eve, you mentioned that we need really, if we need to move forward, we need the SQMT Act. That actually I am linking also to the presentation from Javier on probably having this mandatory adoption and so on. You also mentioned the issue of the level of, in actual whole the presentation, the level of the quality infrastructure. Do you think that there is now a need to assess each country on their level of readiness on quality infrastructure within the AfCFTA state party?
Thanks, Dr. Imogen. Absolutely. I think the challenge that we will have, obviously, once this STQM Act is there, is the level of acceptance. So I think it would make a lot of sense for us to first do our homework and to really do a proper, thorough assessment in terms of where are we at right now, almost like a dipstick, you know, a balance sheet to say, where are we right now? Because we want to ensure that whatever we do, whatever measures we take to, you know, to implement this, this act, it has to be at a level that will not create unnecessary barriers to trade. In other words, you know, we don't want to introduce a problem that will actually work against us. So what we need to do is assess where we are and ensure that we know exactly the level at which we are going to introduce whatever measures it has to work for Africa. That's all I'm saying. It has to work for Africa because we are not at the same level. There are some countries that are way up there. There's some, you know, they literally don't even have a national standards body, you see. So, you know, it's very important that we assess our level of preparedness, and such platforms like this one. I think we need to step up more and more of these platforms with different groups of individuals, with SMEs, as I mentioned before, even with our regulators. I noticed there are quite a few people who are asking about regulators and their acceptance of standards, because every country is introducing their own laws. So, you know, this act is in fact going to militate against a number of pieces of legislations that are already there at national level. So it's very important. Let's do that homework and be sure that we are pitching it at the right level. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, we want to have a harmonized system that's going to facilitate trade, that's going to promote industrialization, that's going to facilitate even innovation, and all of that.
Thank you very much. What is the takeaway message for you?
The takeaway message for me is that I'm really excited about where we are at. Some of my colleagues who are on this platform, yourself and others who are there, I can see their names. Let's use what we have done so far. I was very excited when I listened to the presentation that was done by Caroline. The CASCO tool that we have developed for Africa is really appropriate for the continent. My take home is that let's make use of our African regional harmonized standards. We have our standards. Let's adopt those standards at national level. And also let's make use of the toolbox or the tools that we have. The African Trade Web Portal is one of them. I'm sure most of us have not visited the African Trade Web Portal. There's so much information that's already been developed by ARSO. So, let's not recreate the wheel, continue to recreate the wheel. It's already there. So all that we need to do now is to embrace our standards, to embrace the tools, to implement, to adopt the standards. And I think we'll be on for more trade in Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, participants who have been with us. I can just say in one word what we go with. Yeah, that's take reality of our market and the quality infrastructure into consideration. It has to work for Africa, but bearing in mind the bigger picture that we are not only trading with ourselves, but we are also trading with other countries. We will not close our market. Keep coming and attending our webinars. Our next webinar will be on 21st July next month, where we will talk about the readiness on our SMEs, our industries, on the participation in the AfCFTA and the Africa Quality Award process. Yeah, because we need to be able to say that these products that we are producing are conforming to the standards. These products are also acceptable looking at the safety issues, looking at maybe the environmental issues and other requirements within different countries. It will be on 21st July 2021. I thank you very much for your participation. I look forward to see you on 21st July. Thank you, my presenters. If you can put on your cameras and we can take a group